Why have the gods forsaken us?
Hold the line, brothers. Hold the line!
There are moments in history when time itself seems to hold its breath. When empires tremble, when faith fades, and when the world forgets who it once was. The 3rd century was such a moment, and standing in the ashes of a dying empire was one man whose name time has almost erased. Aurelian, the soldier who rebuilt the world and lost himself doing it. Rome was no longer eternal. Its glory had cracked. Its borders had become wounds. The frontiers that once stood as symbols of power were now gates for invaders. The legions, once iron and fire, had become fragmented. Some loyal to generals, others to gold, and most to fear.
About the gold shipments.
In the span of 50 years, more than 20 emperors had ruled and fallen. Each crowned with hope, each buried in betrayal. The Roman Empire had become a ghost of its former self, vast, proud, and rotting from within. And yet, somewhere on the storm-beaten frontiers of Illyricum, among soldiers hardened by frost and hunger, a name began to spread: Aurelian. A man who did not flinch. A man who did not drink or laugh during battle. A man whose eyes could cut through the fog like blades. He had risen from nothing. No noble blood, no senator's favor, only discipline, obedience, and the unyielding belief that Rome could still be Rome. He was the kind of man the empire used to create, and no longer could. When the throne was offered to him, the empire was broken into 3 pieces. The west had split away under its own generals. The east, the shining kingdom of Palmyra, ruled by the fearless Queen Zenobia, had carved her own empire from the ruins of Rome. And the heart of the world, the city itself, stood fragile, starving, desperate, surrounded by enemies and ghosts. The world no longer believed in Rome, but Aurelian did. And that belief would make him both a savior and a shadow. He began his rule with one promise: to restore the world. And the world, weary and fractured, would soon learn what restoration truly meant. He started with fear. To Aurelian, mercy was weakness. He tightened discipline in the legions, the kind that breaks lesser men but forges iron out of survivors. Cowards were executed, deserters crucified, corruption purged with the sword. He gave no speeches, he gave order. And in a world addicted to chaos, order was a miracle. The first test came from the north. The Germanic tribes had poured into Roman lands like a tide of fire. Aurelian rode with his men through forests and rivers, cutting through the night, breaking the invaders with the precision of a storm. For the first time in decades, the legions fought like Rome again. When the dust settled, the barbarians fled, and the eagle standard stood once more. But Aurelian did not stop. He saw what others refused to see, and that Rome's enemies were not just beyond the borders, but within. He turned his gaze east to the golden sands of Palmyra. There, under the blazing sun, ruled Zenobia, a queen of intelligence, culture, and ambition. Her empire stretched from Egypt to the Euphrates. She called herself Empress of the East. She called herself the heir of Rome. Aurelian marched to remind her that Rome had no heirs, only Rome itself. Through deserts where heat could melt steel, his soldiers carried their shields like prayers. Every mile claimed blood and breath. But Aurelian was relentless. At the Battle of Emesa, his legions crushed the Palmyrene army. Zenobia fled but was captured soon after. Her chariot stuck in the mud beside the river. She was brought before him in chains, and the world held its breath to see if Rome would show mercy. He spared her, not because of pity, but because mercy was now power. The message was clear. Rebellion could rise, but only Rome would endure. And so he moved west, his legions following the sun. The Gallic Empire, as a breakaway realm ruled by its own emperors, fell like sand before him. City after city, land after land, bent the knee. The empire was whole again. From the Atlantic to the Euphrates, from Britain to the sands of Egypt, Aurelian had done what no emperor before him could. The Senate named him Restitutor Orbis, restorer of the world. But restoring Rome's body was one thing. Restoring its soul was another. He rebuilt the walls around the capital, the Aurelian walls, massive and unyielding, as if to hold back not just enemies, but time itself. He reformed the coinage, tried to stop inflation, and revived the belief in Roman order. But deeper still, he sought to give the empire a single god, a single light that could unite the fading faith of its people. He chose the sun, Sol Invictus, the unconquered one. He built temples for him. He filled Rome with gold light and incense and proclaimed the sun to be the true face of eternity. But what Aurelian did not see was that he was worshiping himself. For in every flame, he saw his reflection, a man who had done the impossible. He had brought Rome back from death. He had commanded the world, and when men reach that height, they forget they still walk on earth. The empire, once weak, now feared him. Senators whispered behind marble walls. Generals bowed too deeply. And in the silence of his chambers, the emperor began to feel what every savior feels: isolation. He had saved Rome, but he could no longer trust it. Then came the last betrayal, small, absurd, and fatal. One of his secretaries, fearing punishment for corruption, forged letters that accused Aurelian of planning executions against his own officers. The rumor spread like fire through the ranks.
We must act
Loyalty
before the
turned to
next
fear.
full moon.
Fear turned to murder. And on a quiet road near Byzantium, the emperor who had restored the world was struck down by his own men. There was no final speech, no glory, only the dull thud of armor falling against the earth and the sound of the wind carrying away his last breath. When the news reached Rome, the city froze. Even his enemies did not celebrate, for everyone knew they had killed the last emperor who still remembered what Rome was meant to be. The empire would linger for another 2 centuries, but never again would it be truly whole. Never again would its will be won. And so Aurelian's story became dust, buried beneath the names of emperors who ruled shorter, weaker, and louder. But if you listen closely to history, you can still hear his echo. The soldier who became a god, the savior who became a warning. Because Aurelian was not just the restorer of Rome. He was the reflection of every leader who believes discipline can outlive decay. He was proof that even the strongest hands cannot hold time. That fear may build empires, but it cannot keep them. And yet, his shadow endures. In every system built on control, in every nation that believes strength will save it, in every ruler who mistakes order for peace. His spirit walks among us, the eternal general, marching through centuries unseen but unforgotten. He saved Rome, but lost himself. And perhaps that was the price all saviors must pay. Because the empire never truly fell, it simply learned to wear new faces. And if you look closely at the world today, you may still see Aurelian, in the mirror of every civilization trying not to collapse.